JQ, what's up, brother?
What up, my brother?
Uh, Doing well. It's been a little while. Yeah, let us see you. Your head is off the screen. You got a haircut. You should show it off. Wow, you really chopped it off. Where'd your mohawk go? I
I
think you
put it
left it
all
on.
into my tail.
Oh, you got a tail. Nice, nice. I like it. Hello, everybody. I'm TQ. This is my brother JQ.
What
Uh,
up?
this is Tea Time at the Apothecary after a little bit of a break. Back at it on this fall Friday afternoon. And we are here. We do this usually every Wednesday and Friday. We've been on a software launch break, but I'm excited to be back. And we drink some tea. We talk to interesting guests. We talk about life. We do all kinds of stuff and just talk with you and answer some questions, etc. So thank you for joining us. Today we have an awesome guest that I'm very excited about. The bio alone will be exciting, but then we're actually going to get to talk to him, which is really cool. We have Matt Morris. Matt Morris is an artist, writer, educator, and curator based in Chicago. He has presented artwork nationally and internationally. He's a contributor to artforum.com, Flash Art, Fragrantica, fragrance writer. It's part of what we're talking about today. The Scene and Extra Contemporary Art Quarterly and other publications. His writing has appeared all over. I think we have posted this somewhere, but he is a transplant from Southern Louisiana who holds a BFA from the Art Academy of Cincinnati and earned an MFA in Art Theory and Practice from Northwestern University, as well as a certificate in Gender and Sexuality Studies. In 2017, he earned a certification in Fairyology from Doreen Virtue, PhD. In 2019, he designed the perfume Ferula, a scented candle released by Field and Florist, Chicago, Illinois, in Chicago here. And in 2020, Morris received the prestigious Black Pudding Award from the annual Raymond Hudd Millinery Awards. Matt is an adjunct assistant professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Wow,
What
that was a mouthful, and
doesn't
that was
that
awesome.
do?
Let's welcome Matt.
Yeah, come on in, Matt. Let's bring you in. I mean, Matt,
Hey, Matt.
Hey
what
guys.
what don't you do?
Yeah, you're the
Um,
most distinguished guest we've ever had on this program by far.
well, I stay busy for sure.
You are so studied.
I don't vote for Trump. That's what I don't do.
Well, that makes it 100% on this show, but but what you are a milliner? You're a fragrance maker? You are a teacher? What? I mean, that's awesome. You
It's a
like
really it's an immersive practice for sure, and all these different parts sort of lead into each other. Something that starts as a writing project may become the prompt for a course I teach at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and then that may give me the bones to work with a project for an exhibition, and then invariably that becomes a perfume. And so it's sort of tracking the idea across these materials, and seeing where they resonate in my own personal history and where we might locate them in the culture now.
I love the idea that like a perfume is not a perfume. A perfume is a fragrance touch point for an idea,
Mhm.
and that these ideas can have touch points across many platforms. As a multi-platform artist myself, I really value that outlook. And what sort of what are the ideas you like to play with the most? That right now, what are you feeling? What is resonating?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. The past year's been super busy with various projects, and so maybe I'll focus on some of the perfume ones. Um, that as the bio mentioned, last fall I designed a scented candle called Ferula, um, in conjunction with Field and Florist, which is a great local business that I encourage everyone to look into. Um, they are committed to slow flower movement. So Heidi Joint and Molly Cobalt have a shop in Wicker Park, but farmland out in Michigan, where they're growing all these incredible heirloom varieties of roses and dahlias, and just like last summer they grew this batch of it's a kind of poppy, but the petals are like almost like transparent gray. Like they're just, I'd never seen anything like it. It was so alien.
Wow.
And so we'd been talking about a candle, and they knew at the front end that they didn't want the candle to smell like flowers, like that they'd kind of done enough with flowers for the time being. And so the brief that we ended up working with was thinking through the space between the farmland and bringing the crops into the city. And so the candle smells very earthy. It starts with just a really wet, warm, sun-drenched earth. And then as it burns and fills the space, you start getting these other notes that it centers on galbanum, which is a really snappy green material. And then as the candle sort of lingers in the space, there is this sort of intentional use of things like car exhaust smell, something that like we're following the truck into the city, and starting to sort of pay attention to the urban environment. And so the candle did really well. It sold out really quickly last fall, and actually today is the launch of the second edition. So people
Cool.
the candle.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Some famous people have bought Ferula. Some people in the music industry have like talked about Ferula on their podcasts. It's been a really fun and unexpected opportunity.
Well, I gotta get one now. So
I was gonna say, as someone who sells candles, I don't buy a lot of candles, but I'm buying this one.
Yeah, it's very unique. I have to say.
I'm excited. I love this story too. I love when candles have like, it's not just like, oh, this one's grapefruit. You know, it's like, well, what's the story? I mean, I'm such a sucker for that, and the fact that this relates to the business you're working with is even cooler. You know?
Yeah, I would say that like we really exploited the narrative possibility of how a scent changes over time and space.
cool.
And then this fall, I mean, we've been working on these for a very long time, but we're on the verge of two big releases. I've worked with the Oxbow School of Art and Artist Residency in Saugatuck, Michigan for a number of years. And if people aren't familiar with Oxbow, I encourage them to also look up this incredible organization. It's been around for over 100 years, and it's a sort of artist respite in the Midwest to like get away and sometimes take classes, but sometimes just do a residency. And I've worked with them as an educator for a number of years. I teach in the winters when it's like, it's kind of the most idyllic part of my life. Oxbow is the space that, for me, since I'm there in January, it's like being inside a little Michigan snow globe where there's always hot tea and the kitchen is always baking fresh bread. And seemingly Indigo Girls seems to be playing all the time. And also there are ghosts. And in some ways that was the starting point that Shannon Stratton, the current director of Oxbow, invited me to make Oxbow's first signature perfume. So we've been developing it for a while, and it'll be released on December 1st.
Wow.
And it comes from this sort of incredible story of a woman named Mary Kay, not the perfume, not the makeup brand, but she was a caretaker on the grounds of Oxbow a number of years ago, known lesbian, and had a partner named Jean Palmer. You know, the pictures of them are incredibly charming. They also ran a gas station and soda fountain in town, and their ghosts are said to haunt the campus as benevolent, but maybe also a little mischievous. So the perfume
as
for
ghosts are wont to be, right?
exactly. The perfume for Oxbow is really like a lesbian ghost story. And at the center of it is this really narcotic mix of flowers, mimosa, ylang-ylang, tuberose, champaca, that kind of creates this really sensual sort of core to the scent. And around it are a lot of sort of powdery qualities, things from heliotrope mostly, and violet. And then down in the bottom of the scent is a bed of blonde tobacco and labdanum, castoreum, which are these sort of like plant and resins that recall animal notes. And so it gets kind of furry and tobacco-y in the bottom, which I guess is sort of like, I was looking for sort of a butch element in the scent. And so I couldn't be happier with how it's going. The one of the different parts of Oxbow is that they teach hot glass on campus, and so Shannon tasked the hot glass studio staff to hand blow and craft the flacons that this perfume is going to be released in. And so it'll be released in sort of really small artisanal batches with these incredible one-of-a-kind hand blown and crafted glass.
Oh, wow.
All right. Well, I just got to sign up for the Matt Morris subscription. And like every time something gets released, I'll just like charge my card. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, you need a monthly box. It's like, here's your one-of-a-kind thing. I also made you a hat to go with it. Like,
there are also so many hats these days.
Yeah. Hey, I want to interrupt for 1 second and just welcome anybody new who's joining us. Again, this is TQ and JQ, Tea Time at the Apothecary. Today, our guest is Matt Morris, an interdisciplinary artist, fragrance writer, which we want to get into, fragrance, perfumer, all kinds of stuff that we've been discussing, and we're going to keep digging into. And
let's talk for a second about what kind of tea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're drinking some herbs, right? Some herbal infusion.
She is fully decaffeinated and has been for a very long time. So Dandelion Tea is kind of an earthy, nutty blend that is one of my go-tos, especially at this time of year.
Well, you picked the right people to have this one with, because I would say like this has been, since we were little kids, being in this 145-year-old apothecary that, has really come out of the European herbal tradition. Like dandelion root is, most people don't drink that, but it's been kind of common household sort of usage and talk for us since I can remember. So
yeah, and if anybody, we should like maybe just cover a dandelion root. Obviously, is amazing, and for people that are trying to transition off of caffeine but still want a nutty kind of chocolatey thing going on. A lot of these roots, like chicory root and dandelion root, they're lovely for still satisfying that nuttiness, is the best way I can put it. Is like
give some substance to it that maybe other herbs
something you can chew on a little bit, right?
Yeah, totally.
And but primarily for people who are trying to go on a cleanse, this is a great tea to like jumpstart your cleanse. It's good as a daily tonic, and it's great for liver cleansing. So all the liver blends that we see in the apothecary, we'll see dandelion leaf and root in there, dandelion juice, all of the parts of the dandelion being used. And the root is arguably the most potent of those because it is the most, in dried form, I would say. Fresh leaves are also incredibly good. And if you're looking for a good cleanse, most of the bodegas, I go to harvest time, you can get huge bundles of fresh dandelion and make yourself an amazing salad with that. That also is an incredible internal cleanser.
Yeah.
So.
And Matt, we have this touch point that we come back to often about, isn't it amazing that so much of what we call weeds have so many good uses and are actually maybe like the most valuable thing. So like, this is another one. I was really happy that we picked this because I feel like what is a weed? Is it a weed, or is it like a super potent, powerful tool for our development?
It's almost as if the world was saying, this one's good for you. Let me make it easy to make a lot of this one.
It reminds me that it comes up when I'm doing critiques with my undergraduates, that invariably someone will bring up a word like garbage about something, and it really gives us pause to unpack, like, what do we mean by garbage, and who decides the value and worth of a material on the planet? And I think it drives very close to what you're saying, of rethinking maybe some of the hidden potentials of what's at close range.
Yeah. And part of why I'm excited that we're talking about this too is that I was reading some of your writing, and I'd like to talk about it a little bit and even mention it, and we'll link up some things because you have some great blog posts about perfume. But I also want to say, and I mean this as a compliment, so I have a degree in religion, but it was like postmodern literary criticism degree in religion, not as theology, but as like a reading of sociology and phenomenology in the 90s with Mark Taylor was my professor. I don't know if you know him, but it was like, I feel like I learned this way in my 20s of reading, you know, in a postmodern way, talking about the usage of words. And I haven't had a little, you know, then I personally, I use that in my life, but I haven't sort of delved into that. And I started reading some of your, like in the first 2 sentences of your milk article, I was like, I'm back in my college days reading, like, you know, I'm trying to think of who some of the writers that I would be reading, like Lacan and you know, whatever. It's like I felt like I was back in that tradition, and the fact that you can write about fragrance but also work in sort of literary theory and criticism in that, just I've had a smile on my face all morning. So
it makes me so happy to hear. I mean, you know, there's over a decade of art criticism before I came to writing about perfume. And part of my interest in perfume was, I suppose it was a kind of drag. I was really obsessed a couple of years ago, I guess I still am, with the French poet Stephen Mallarmé. And in the 1870s, he started a fashion magazine that ran for 8 issues, and he never identified himself as the author, and in fact used a series of nom de plumes. And he wrote the entire interior. Like, there was a women's advice column in it, and he both was the advice columnist, but also he wrote all the letters that people sent in. And in the sort of field of Mallarmé scholarship, largely people don't know what to do with this very weird, seemingly very earnest set of essays about fashion. And it kind of sparked an interest for me to see how the space of perfume writing and reviewing perfume can, you know, may be seen in some ways as frivolous or superficial, and is it possible to create a space of meaning there? And so I do think I so appreciate the way you're noticing some of the elements of the writing, because it's this sort of game of playing with very purple prose, like that I put on a sort of Oscar Wilde hat and just really go wild and loose with my descriptions and my playfulness. There's lots of puns, but then, as you say, there's also this understructure that is like structuralist deconstruction philosophy, that I'm using perfume as a sort of vehicle to question how we make meaning in our lives.
I mean, you do all that. I love that, the way you've described that. And just to give people who are watching or listening a sense, your article that I sort of immediately felt that was my milk scents bring all the boys to the yard. So obviously the play on words and the pun is there. But I have to say, this is like a novella of information, you know, or it's a journal article of information about milk scents. It's fantastic. It's fun, and also it's serious too. I really we should link it up. It's it's great. So many of your articles are, but I just jumped on that one, and it's like you immediately get into like the sort of, you know, psychological mother and what milk means, and sort of all the sort of helplessness that comes with the idea of milk, but then also the comfort. It is great. If someone wants to get a sense of who you are as a writer, I think this would be a great place to jump in. And my guess is either they will love it like I do and find it amazing, or they're going to be like, whoa, this is a lot of information. But you make it easy for people to decide, I think.
Well, and you know that the milk article came about as I was also working on 2 perfumes that are releasing imminently. Last year, I came to know this this musician in town, a hip hop and R&B artist named The Mind. And in conversing, we found out that we're both twins. And in his forthcoming album, that's going to be called Don't Let It Go to Your Head, there's one track called Gemini Shit. And in talking between the 2 of us and some other friends of ours, we came up with the idea that he wanted to release a set of perfumes with the album. And so I started working from a very psychological place of being a twin, and thinking through these sort of like, they're not exactly binaries, but they're sort of parallel attachments, and trying to figure out a vocabulary for that in scent. And what emerged was, on the one hand, Castor and Pollux are the names of the scents. These are the twins from the Gemini constellation.
Yeah.
And Castor is very herbaceous, and it's got a kind of cola quality at its heart. But then there's additions of things like juniper and ginger and artemisia and coriander that really sort of spice it up and make it pretty lively. And then by comparison, Pollux really is a milk scent. And so the article was one of my means of like mapping and orienting and finding out like milk can go coconut, milk can go like butter. It can get pretty weird, honestly. Yeah. And I was trying to find like that right spot. And so the Pollux scent is really, it's almost like powdered milk, like that sort of powdered coffee creamer, set alongside suede. And so it's kind of a really velvety, supple suede and powdered milk scent that that should be out later this year.
Nice.
Cool. Put it in the subscription box, the Matt Moore subscription box. I want it.
So hey, let's smell a few, together.
Yeah, totally.
You have is there an order you want to go?
Yeah, Matt, why don't you pick? So I'll set the ground. We basically, in connecting with you, we sent you some samples. I think some things you asked for, as well as maybe one or two others that maybe Dana on our team had suggested, and we're going to go from there. So yeah.
One of Dana's suggestions was this Baccara by Gallivant that's new this year.
Yeah.
And I hadn't smelled before.
Is that what you're on right now?
It is what I have just picked up. Yeah.
Cool. I should have been a little more prepared with my dry downs, but I know this fragrance pretty well. Yeah.
I mean, Dana had mentioned that that from reading my writing on Fragrantica, she knows I have a real soft spot for iris. And the thing is, like, when it comes to iris and violet, I'm kind of a cheap date at this point because I've come to appreciate all these different facets. But I love a powdery, chalky iris. I love like a cold, chilly iris. I especially love when iris gets used and enlisted in a sort of cosmetic note, sort of face powders and lipsticks. But I think my favorite iris of all is the really root forward, earthy one. And that's what this is giving me. It brings up like raw carrot and raw potato, and these really sort of dense earthy qualities of the orris root. And then like, starts to really play with it well. The thing I'm struck by with this is that the sort of pyramid as I see it is that it's a pear, iris, ambrette scent. And I've written about this a bit. It's a really beautiful combination of notes, but one that I think has been really perverted in the mainstream as like a very wearable, easy, transparent skin scent that seems popular among insecure millennials or something. Baccara is actually like really building those notes to be robust and rich and gorgeous, and you can really like.
This is not invisible at all.
No. It's very, I was thinking, I had it on my wrist the other day and I was thinking like, I am in the right mood for this scent. And so it is perfection, but you kind of have to be prepared to wear the amount of power that's in this scent. I think that like, I think there are going to be days that this is going to be a lot for some people. But it's so potent and gorgeous for me.
I mean, it kind of makes me cough a little bit. Like I mean,
you're catching in your throat because it's got
like I'm just not like because I'm not enjoying, but I'm just sensing the sort of like what you're saying, the power of it.
When it's got this combination, clove is always when I use orris and in my blending, I usually add a little bit of clove. It's like Julia Child always said, like, never cook mushrooms without nutmeg. Like, no matter what else you're going to do to them, always add a little nutmeg. And I think similarly, I usually add really subtle traces of clove to just add some spiciness and depth to whatever I'm doing with iris. And the clove is here, but they've paired it with caraway seed. And I find the combination like surprising and fantastic.
I agree. I think that to this is just me
Really?
personally. Like everything you're saying is true. I don't always love orris root. Like I respect it, but it's not what I choose. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, clove is one of those things too that for me in general, when things are too clove heavy, I find it to be like,
Man,
what?
man.
Yeah, like becomes sort of like this sort of stereotype of masculinity that I don't really like. And somehow the caraway sort of coming first.
Well, it pulls out the earthiness of the orris in like a. It takes it away from cosmetic-y kind of a little bit, and it it brings out that earthy side of it that you're saying is forward in this particular one.
Well, and that bready side, like, and by that I mean like caraway to me is so associated with rye bread at my grandma's house as a little kid, and like this feeling of like comfort and like well worn. Like her house, it had been there 100 years or 1,000 years to me as a kid. It was like her kitchen was just that place. And this isn't like super foodie, but there is this note of like,
Yeah.
there's something more than just earthiness. It's like there is a little bit of that breadiness note that to me is one of the best things in the world, like rye bread. Jeez.
And a little bit of like your grandma's, lipstick or whatever
Yeah,
too is
exactly.
in there. It's very nanny.
Yeah.
When it's got this, it also has this pairing of osmanthus, which is already kind of apricot leaning, and they've really enhanced that osmanthus to be this like dry fruit to go along with some of the spices and the bread as you bring up. And yet, as you say, like I totally agree. I don't think this is a particularly gourmand scent, but it's just got all of these kind of comforting touchstones in a really sort of, as I say, like one spray will probably do you. It's a really potent mix.
Yeah. Cool. Have you met? Do you know anything about Nick Stewart? Have you ever
No,
talked to him?
I know almost nothing about Galavan.
Nick Stewart, I'm not prepared to do his whole biography justice, but I will just say I've met him a few times. He's visited us, done in-person appearances. He is one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. And he was behind a lot of like mainstream commercial fragrances and sort of like the mainstream, let's say, niche fragrances, and wanted to do this as his own, like, hey, I'm ready to do something of my own. And it's such a great collection. And he happens to be one of the nicest people that I've ever met, like in the industry or outside of it. He is truly just a great guy. So Nick, if you see this, I can't wait till you can come hop across the pond again and come visit us after all this craziness is over. So
yeah, that would be beautiful.
Yeah.
What do we want to try next?
I'm holding the Kupala from I don't know how to pronounce this brand.
Xenu.
Xenu. And one of the things
Or
I noticed,
Xenu. I can't remember if it's Xenu or Xenu as far as because it's like a native, it's a sort of a native word, not a Spanish Mexican
right,
word.
right.
Zapotec word or something.
Yeah.
I noticed that the nose for this is Rodrigo Flores Roux, and I think of him as like he's designed for Tom Ford and John Varvatos, but also like in a way that is very close to my heart. He's done a number of projects with Avon, and one of the things that I thought about with that as I was smelling this is incense can be kind of tricky for me. I've got to be sort of sold on it. And I feel like he brings his experience of like making pleasing fragrances for the mainstream into the sort of balancing act of materials in this, so that the copal is really sort of softened and made a lot friendlier through his use of Mexican vanilla.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's very interesting, but it is also a crowd pleaser at the same time in a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like German brand Runholz tend to mostly focus on on incense notes, and I like those incenses because they are like kind of mean and very intellectual, and yeah, you only a specific kind of person's going to want this, and I think that this is a way to really open up that material, and sort of, yeah, create some sort of friendliness with it.
This is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I like this a lot. Usually vanilla for me goes like headachy. I get that like note that kind of pierces and is like a little too sweet for me. This stays spicy, and at the same time I'm smelling what you're smelling. Like there's something, and I don't mean this as a diss, there's something typical about this in that like it feels like a department store scent gone rogue or
Yeah.
something, you know, like
Well, and that
No, I think
to me, the woody notes kind of prevent this from getting into that like headache vanilla that can sometimes, you know, can enjoy from afar, but I don't want too much of it around.
right.
You know.
And isn't that always like, I'm a great lover of vanilla notes, but I almost always think there's too much of it in any scent. Like scents that I love that have vanilla in it, I always think like, I wonder if I could get them to mix this for me and just take the vanilla down
Yeah.
to a whisper or something.
yeah.
It just takes over.
It does. It's really powerful, but it is it's nice here because it's actually it's kind of the glue, you know? It's like melting everything together a little bit.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Um,
Cool.
That's a
Let's
really
keep
beautiful.
going. While you're picking the next one, I'd just say again, if you just joined us, we're with Matt Morris, interdisciplinary artist, perfumer, fragrance writer, and we're smelling some fun stuff today. We're going to have it all linked, so if you want to do it, you can order products, you can order samples, you can stop in our store. If you're here in Chicago, we would love for you to smell along with us. You can replay this video and smell with us. It'd be fun.
This Copala, you should get a sampler of this. This is a good one to go into this colder weather with, I feel like.
totally. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
What do you want to try next?
I would say both of them. Something about the Bukhara. It's not necessarily like I don't think of it as a super obviously cold weather fragrance, but this gray day, there's something in the caraway seeds and the orris root that just kind of made me feel like, let's lean into the melancholy a little bit. You know?
Got my number.
Yeah.
Have you guys have you two heard the new mashup album between Smashing Pumpkins and Jay-Z?
Yeah. You sent it to me, and it's pretty unbelievable.
Yo, Matt, it's real good. I mean, it's not just like a haphazard mashup. Somebody spent a lot of time making this.
I will venture out of my cave to try this. I have been in a like strange sort of 2-year journey where all I listen to is Hildegard von Bingen, like a female mystic choral arranger from centuries ago.
Yeah.
And that is literally all I listen to now.
Wow.
And it does this thing. I had been going through some family grieving things, and I was kind of in a constant state of alarm around our federal government. And Hildegard sort of shifts me into this sort of space that time gets reorganized. And so I've been like really honoring it, but I know in the meantime I'm missing out on all kinds of cultural phenomenon.
Well, I think this one's pretty new. Not many people have heard it yet, and I mean it's blowing up right now, I think, but it's it's
The reason he brings it up
it's
is
taking Jay-Z released his Black album as a acapella, and so people can do whatever they want with it. But somebody took the time to really dig through the Pumpkins catalog and make this sort of eerily sad version of Jay-Z's record. And
wild.
it's instead of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, it's called Marcy Projects and the Infinite Sadness. So I recommend that people out there go check that out. It's accompanied the art. When you land on the site, you'll see it's beautifully done. Somebody took a lot of time. So check that out. What are we smelling next?
I wanted to smell, but also kind of learn a little more about is the brand called Outre-Mai?
yeah. Outremer. I'm not a French expert, but we always say, yeah, that is correct. It used to be called La Romarine, and I don't know why so you probably might see that name also, but it was the brand was renamed somewhere along the way because of business issue to Outremer or Outremer?
I mean, one of the things I've noted in the years I've been working with Fragrantica is people in other parts of the country and world have the hardest time finding this line of perfumes. And I've realized that I've long taken for granted that they've always been at Merz. So I've had them at really close, easy availability.
I've known the owner since I was, for the past 20 some years personally. So he's, it's one of these, like, he was telling me, I remember 15 years ago or more, him saying, everyone puts Paris on their fragrance. All the perfumers say Paris, but I am now officially the only perfume company left actually making it within the borders of Paris. So he was like really he was kind of a few person shop making things and just trying to do something on his own. And
also, Matt, you have to see when we get an order, when it was called Laura Marine when I was working the front of the store, but it would be like, Laura Marine's here, and it's like all hands on deck. I would definitely end up with like cuts all over my hands from using the box cutter because you were going to be opening 1,000 boxes that day.
Yeah, because the way they wrapped it, they don't have boxes, they're just glass. So these things would show up having to survive this journey. These huge, heavy things filled with glass, wrapped like 15 times each. It was crazy.
You'd have like a rag ready because it inevitably one broke in each case. It was just part of doing business.
Well, as I say, like if you dig around on the user message boards on Fragrantica, it seems like there's always someone saying like, I'm in the US, I can order from Small Flower and I can then ship it to you wherever you are in Austria or something.
That's cool.
So I think y'all are the go-to for it. And I really love this brand. It's worth saying that they're really good bargains, that these are like,
it's definitely value driven. And I really like that they go super hard. If you love a note,
right,
they go really hard. If you love vanilla, you're gonna get vanilla punched in your face. Like violet, you're gonna get violet. If you like cola, you're gonna get cola punch in the face.
Well, that's why I was curious about the violet. I didn't think I had smelled it before, and it's exactly as you say. Like, there's everything you could love about a violet is in the scent.
Like 10x.
You're a violet junkie, you were saying.
Yeah, violet and iris. I'm definitely on a journey with the both of them. And I found on the strip, the violet goes very woody really quickly. And on my skin, it actually starts with that like patisserie candied violets. I think it's a note that some people are really either put off by or associate with antiquity. But I'm quite fond of it. But then it really clears out to being this very cool woody scent that is pretty profound for me, to be honest.
Yeah, it is really woody. You're right. It's beautiful. And it's nice to smell a wood that doesn't go warm.
Right. Yeah, a cool wood.
And you get like a little bit of the stem, sort of, the little greenish.
I'm not trying to digress from this, but before I forget, I want to say, Matt, have you smelled Blocky for walks?
Oh, I believe I did, but maybe it was like right before quarantine or something. The
only reason I say that is I love that fragrance intensely, and it is walking on the first spring day where you can really go for a walk in a forest, and there's still some patches of snow on the ground, so you're smelling all this earthiness and woodiness, and it's very cool. But there's violet notes coming up like on a sunny spring day, that there's snow but also flowers. And I agree, you're getting some of that in this, but I also think like as a digression, you might want to revisit that sometime.
Yeah, I wrote it down to remind myself.
It's that cool woody violet walk to an extreme. I love it.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you can't. As you were both saying, I mean, these are like soliflores. They're really about one thing and kind of unpacking a few facets of it. But as like a study in violet, I think it's a great $22 eau de toilette that really sort of transcends its price and position. Which I guess you could say I have an invested interest in. Like, I love spending $400 on a Serge Lutens perfume as much as anyone else. But I love finding like what are the really like I wrote a long piece for Fragrantica about like the really good fragrances in the Britney Spears dynasty. Like, and I went through all whatever 27 perfumes that Britney Spears name has been associated to, and found like where do they get kind of artistic and strange. And like they had come out with one last year maybe called Prerogative, and like the notes are lily, rubber, espresso, saffron. It's a very weird mix, and I ended up saying that it kind of felt like someone had set up a coffee house in the corner of a funeral home and then was like popping poppers while they were like
I
waiting.
gotta smell this.
It's
I
very
will say I was not a fan of her revisit to the Bobby Brown classic. I did not think it was a high point musically.
sure.
But I'm glad it was. But so maybe it's the appropriate scent. It's pretty weird.
Pretty
But
weird.
while
You
we're
know
on the
what the
musical
song? Come to think of it, the song kind of sounds like an espresso bar set up in the corner of a funeral home.
You
tip.
really got it. But I think it's worth acknowledging that like under this sort of, I don't know, pop princess veneer, those perfumes can get very kind of avant-garde, sort of in spite of themselves sometimes.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I think that part of the reason as we got in over the past, well, we've been selling perfumes forever, but like really over the past 15 years more into the artisanal or niche area. It was I feel like I've tried to never forget and never be snooty about the sort of like Euro classics for $25 and all these other things that we have, because there are gems in there. There are some real gems, and I don't believe in like Merz is not set up. Our apothecary is not set up on exclusivity as as sort of like a limiting factor. Like we sell some things that would be considered exclusive, but we do it right next to some things that are like for everybody. And to me, I take a lot of pride that that's the way we run it, and that's the way we approached our fragrance collection. Was like stop being snooty and just like smell things and pick what you like and what interests you. And if it costs $400 and you can afford it, great. If it costs $20 and that's what you want, great. I don't care.
Yeah,
You know?
I love that so much. That is so close to my own sort of ethos and interest. So it's
Cool.
great to hear, considering how long I've loved Merz.
Thanks.
That is part of the way you see it as well.
It definitely is.
Got another. I don't know if we're gonna get to all three, but that we have here. But shout out another one, Matt.
I wanted to give a little love to Josh Meyer with the Imaginary Authors Telegramma.
Josh is such a great guy too. He's another perfumer, has visited us a few times, and I'm a fan of him.
I mean, my first Imaginary Authors purchase was from Merz, and I got Yesterday Haze years ago as like, talk about another really good milk scent, but it's like milk and fig and hay. It lasts forever. It's got like such, it's so beautifully attenuated. I think oftentimes when people talk fig, they go to diptyque, and it's nice. But I really think that the Yesterday Haze is kind of a beautiful sleeper.
Are you talking about Philosicos or?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I always think, honestly, my number one fig is Debaser.
Oh yeah, my good friend Deb Parr. That's one of her fragrances.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, this is Telegramma, right?
This is Telegramma, yeah. And I've been writing a lot about powdery scents. I wrote a piece midsummer about what smells help you feel safe. Knowing that there's a lot of things that can't keep us safe, but are there things that we can find comforting during the pandemic? And I really noticed that I was drifting towards real powder bombs. And Telegramma has a really lovely talc powder. I find that the lavender and the white musks are not overplayed. They're pretty soft in it. It is a place, if I'm totally honest, this might be one of the places where I wonder if I needed the vanilla here. It gives some roundness to it, I suppose. But when I kind of smell past the vanilla and get into that teak wood and
teak wood is what catches me.
Say
Sorry, I
again?
didn't mean to. I was just gonna say the teak wood is so alluring in this.
It's so alluring, right? And so like there's a part of me that thinks like I would love to smell a version of this that's got a few like one or two less things vying for attention, because that teak wood and powder combo is totally, as you say, really seductive.
There's it's spicy too.
Well, there's pepper, and
Pepper, that's what it is. Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's
Can I give a little shout out to Josh and Imaginary Authors on the design as well. Their design is always on point. I just love their labels, and like this is no exception. The sort of, old school, I don't know, early 20th century kind of like telegram mail, heading into the future kind of look of this is really, there's something comforting about that as well to me.
yeah. It's utterly charming. He's based in Portland, is that right?
Yeah, he is. At least last time I saw him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I basically think he's one of our American geniuses, of just making really, there are things like, well, L'Orchidée die Terrible. I don't know if I'm going to get that right. That was an early one that I think has been discontinued and you can hardly find it anywhere. But it was really lovely. Another one I really loved. But there are things like I don't know if I need to wear Cape Heartache, but I think it's a genius perfume.
Yeah, I agree.
I've recommended it when friends have asked me like, oh, I kind of want something like this. I send them that way. And it's become several people's signatures. So I think he's got like he's such a storyteller. And as a result, I find that people really connect in really sort of profound ways to the formulations.
I like the lavender in here I'm getting like a lot of that right now. And that is it's not I don't want people to think it's not a floral lavender and it's not an earthy lavender. It's like at Merz we have these like old school candies, and one of them is like a lavender scented, and it's more like that. It's like a candied lavender more. And without being like, it's not hurting my teeth when I smell it, but it has that kind of a vibe. It's like a little bit sweet.
Well,
it's almost like you don't.
That's combined with, I think part of that is it's a powdery scent. So like those are pressed powder candies, those like pastilles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that you're associating the powder and the lavender with that appropriately. But it's that powderiness that Matt was referring to that really, is part of the appeal of this scent.
I like it. That's cool.
I mean, when I first smelled it this morning, I found myself thinking that it has sort of it made me think of like a gender bending spa day, where maybe the kind of spa where someone brings you a cocktail. Like it's got like, I don't know, sometimes powdery scents can be very, very Miss Havisham, kind of melancholic. And this is a very optimistic powder, if that makes sense. There's a brightness to all of it. It's cheerful.
It does. It's not stuck in reminiscence.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, Matt, actually, since you are, you have in your bio that T was reading, you have some sort of accreditation in gender and sexuality studies, right?
Ooh, yes.
And can we talk for a second? Because me and T are always trying to tell people, we get a lot of questions on the program even while we're smelling, and people say, is it for a woman? Is it feminine? Is it masculine? And we always say, well, the perfume doesn't have a penis. But so it doesn't know, it doesn't know. So maybe can you speak a little bit to sort of like, I don't know, why we kind of, how we can break out of this idea that a scent is for a particular person, or that it's a binary sort of idea.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to try to figure out how to do that succinctly, because I could talk all afternoon about it. I mean, one of the places where I find where gender falls apart really easily around perfume is that if you track a note across different time periods, in one zone, it's become popularized among men in Europe, and then 25 years later, it's like a common note in women's perfumery. Of course, perfume is a technology like fashion and hairstyles that are meant to regulate identity in passive or somewhat forceful ways. And so there is a purpose, a kind of hegemonic notion of maintaining a binary through it. Of course, I think all of that is totally ridiculous, and I'm very interested, and in fact have been very interested in watching that, especially queer people over generations transgressed around the scent as a way to signal something outside of the presumptions of heterosexism. You know, I could just kind of do a whole appreciation conversation about Germaine Cellier, one of the very few female perfumers in the first half of the 20th century. And she was designing for Robert Piguet and designed Bandit, which is her like butch scent. And she said when it was released that it was meant to smell like green stems snapped asunder, the crack of a leather whip, and the sweat that gathers in a woman's underthings. And it's very, came out in like 1944, and I find it to still be one of the most erotic, intense, but like, you know, it was made, she was making it for the dykes. And then she developed Fracca, which I think is a bit more well known. It's a very bouncy tuberose where you can kind of hear her, if it's not sarcasm, it's at least camp around the notion of femininity. She's playing with the tropes of the feminine in a way that's almost cartoonish. And so like, if I look back at folks like that, or like, I recently rewatched The Maltese Falcon, and there's a queer coded character in it where before he comes into the room, Humphrey Bogart's secretary says that he smells of gardenias, and they both like cut eyes at each other because that's supposed to mean something, that like that they are undoing something about what they might think of him as a man or as a straight man. And so I'm really interested in those histories of transgression, but then I also think right now it's become an important popular selling point that the aforementioned Britney Spears prerogative was branded as unisex. Now, I think lots of, especially gay boys, have been wearing Britney Spears perfumes for the last 15 years, but this one was branded to be unisex. And the same Cher's new perfume that came out and last year and has won some awards is rather famously announced as a non-binary perfume. And so I think these things go in waves. I think you can watch hemlines and dresses in relationship to whether you have a progressive or conservative president in a country. Like fashion is an important, useful barometer of understanding where our collected consciousness is. And I would say right now we're in the throes of it, that there are areas of perfume as an industry that is really embracing understanding gender beyond a binary. But I think sort of simultaneously, we could find just as many corners where perfumery is maybe doubling down hard on the idea of like, I'm making a men's fragrance. I'm making something that's about quote unquote womanhood, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I could keep talking about it, but
no, I think you just kind of like whet our appetite for the idea of having you come back sometime, and maybe we can get in more time to discuss these things. Because honestly, I have like a lot of questions, comments, and all kinds of things on this. This is really fascinating to me. And your knowledge of the history of fragrance. Honestly, we could spend a whole program on any of these kind of like topics that we raised today. And I hope you'll indulge us and let us do that sometime.
I would love it. You guys are great.
Yeah, thanks. Matt,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I assume we know where to, Greta will be posting some things, but if people want to, if you watch this and you want to follow Matt, like what one channel would you say is the best way to stay on top of the Matt Morris production?
I mean, my only social media presence is Instagram, and it's Heart Matt Morris, like heart. And then my website is mattmorrisworks.com. I don't update it as consistently as I probably ought to. So I suppose the Instagram is where you can kind of track me in real time.
That's really cool. Matt, I'm looking forward to the next time we get to do this. And I'm sure everyone who watches this now or in the future is going to feel the same way. Hey, everybody, check out Matt Morris's fragrance writing if you like this on Fragrantica. There's an incredible collection of great fragrance essays, blog posts, all kinds of things. Check out check out the website for these exciting projects. I know I really am serious. I want your subscription box. I will be a subscriber. And thank you for joining us today and drinking some dandelion tea.
Thank you so much. I longtime lover of Merz Apothecary. There's really, I go to Paris and Austria and Brussels to look for perfumes, and there's really no place like Merz. Like, there are other great perfumeries, but there's something very unique and very special about what you make available to the Midwest. And it's very well curated, and I admire it such a great deal.
Well, thank you. I will take that compliment as a way to announce that we just moved on to a new website at smallflower.com. So if you're not in Chicago and you can't visit our apothecary, please check it out. It's just launched, but it's working really well, and we're about to sort of make a ton of improvements. It's been honestly, Matt, I was looking forward to this interview so much because I've been in months and months of like software, behind the scenes, back end stuff, database work, and like I'm coming back. This is the longest conversation I've had with any human being that wasn't about data for like 3 months. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I just want to shout out to the new website, but was also true of the old one. But I really gotta give it to you, T. The foresight of putting everything searchable including notes of perfumes is so brilliant, because if you all love orris root and you want to check it out, all you got to do is go into the website and put orris root fragrance, and you'll get pages to check out of various things and ideas to bring forth. And so if you're feeling like, oh, this is a violet year for me, you can then go and get little $6 samples, $5, $6 samples of 10 different violet, things, and really try them on for weeks at a time and find out where you live with it and where you want to come down. So thanks for being on, Matt. And we definitely want to have you back. I think next time, let's smell less and learn more. And because I feel like you have a wealth of knowledge I want to tap, and just greedily, I want to learn. So, and I think if I want to, I'm sure people out there do too. So thank you for your time and for your wisdom, and for smelling along with us. And have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.